The air in the hallway tasted like wet copper before Clara Thomas fell through it. She didn't fly. She simply ceased occupying her kitchen and existed instead on a gravel beach in Norway. The transition tore the strap of her faded canvas, knapsack. Cold seawater soaked her sneakers instantly. Clara didn't scream. She sat on the stones, shivering, clutching her knees. There was no grand purpose in her chest, only a sudden, violent nausea. She looked at the gray horizon, then closed her eyes, wishing for her warm radiator, and felt the sickening tug of the world bending again. She materialized 3 inches above her linoleum floor, landing with a dull thud outside her door. Heavy footsteps paused. It was M.R. Garrick. Clara froze, her hand gripping her brass keyring so tightly the metal bit into her palm. "Clara?" His voice was muffled, thick with phlegm. The notice was due Tuesday. Clara stared at the door handle. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Her lungs felt flattened, like empty paper bags. I hear you in there," Garrick grunted. Clara squeezed her eyes shut, desperately picturing her sister's quiet, cluttered kitchen miles away. Clara tumbled onto the linoleum of another kitchen, knocking over a plastic stool. Her sister, Beatrice, jumped, dropping a wooden spoon. "Clara, you!" The door was locked. Clara scrambled up, hiding her torn knapsack behind her back. The window," Clara stammered, her voice trembling. I let myself in." Beatrice stared at Clara's damp sneakers and the smell of salt water clinging to her coat. "In dry weather, you're shaking." Clara looked at the floor, avoiding her sister's searching eyes. "I just need a moment, just a quiet minute, Bea." Beatrice watched her sister stand in the center of the kitchen, looking like a ghost caught in a draft. "You didn't use the stairs, Clara?" Beatrice said softly, setting the wooden spoon down. Clara's hands clutched her knapsack like a shield. I walked fast," Clara muttered, her eyes darting to the window. "Through the rain?" Beatrice asked, pointing at the dry pavement outside. Clara didn't answer. She just stood there, smelling of ocean depths and old copper, completely refusing to explain how she had crossed 2 counties in a heartbeat. By midnight, Clara was back in her own apartment, but the silence felt heavy, dangerous. She reached for her pocket, her fingers searching for the familiar weight of her brass keyring. It was gone. A cold sweat broke out on her neck. She must have dropped it on the gravel beach or worse in the hallway when M.R. Garrick was knocking. Without those keys, she was locked inside her own life, unable to leave the apartment by normal means without admitting she was there. The physical world was catching up, leaving crumbs of her existence everywhere. M.R. Garrick stood in the dim corridor, holding a flashlight. He bent down near Clara's door, his bad knee clicking. His light caught something metallic near the baseboard, a heavy brass keyring. He picked it up, frowning at the strange, damp smell of salt water lingering in the carpet. He knocked again, harder this time. "Clara? I have your keys, and we need to talk about the rent." Inside, Clara pressed her back against the door, her breath coming in shallow, ragged gasps. She couldn't run. The air felt too heavy to tear. Every jump left a physical trace. Clara woke up with blood dried in the outer canal of her left ear. The pressure changes between sea level and her third-floor apartment were tearing her apart from the inside. She sat on her mattress, staring at her hands. They were raw, chapped by winds from 3 different continents she had visited for mere seconds just to escape a thought. She was becoming a ghost of drafts and sudden temperature drops. She wanted to stop, but the ease of vanishing was a drug she couldn't quit. M.R. Garrick didn't like mysteries. He called Beatrice, using the emergency contact number Clara had written on her lease 3 years ago. "She's not answering," Garrick said, rubbing his temple. "But her things are there. Her knapsack is gone, but her lights are on." Beatrice held the phone tightly, looking at the empty chair in her kitchen where Clara had stood only yesterday. She's traveling," Beatrice lied poorly, her voice cracking. "She does that," Garrick grunted, looking at the wet stains on the hallway carpet. "In the middle of the night?" Clara materialized directly into M.R. Garrick's back office. The air popped, a sharp sound like a whipped towel. She held her breath, her heart hammering against her ribs. On his desk lay her brass keyring next to a stack of unpaid utility bills. She reached out, her fingers trembling. The office smelled of stale tobacco and old paper. She grabbed the keys, but her sleeve caught a plastic cup of cold coffee, sending it clattering to the floor. From the adjacent room, she heard the heavy scrape of Garrick's chair. The door swung open. M.R. Garrick stood there, holding a half-eaten sandwich. He stared at Clara, then at the spilled coffee, then at the brass keyring in her hand. "How did you—" he started, looking past her at the locked window. Clara took a step back, her back hitting the filing cabinet. I just came for the keys," she whispered, her voice cracking. The door was open. Garrick didn't look angry. He looked deeply, profoundly confused. "You weren't in the hall, Clara." "I was just out there." She didn't let him finish. Clara closed her eyes and pulled the world toward her. This time, she didn't choose a destination. She just chose a way. She landed in a crowded market in Peru, the heat hitting her like a physical blow. People jostled her, shouting in Spanish. She had no money, no knapsack, only her brass keyring clutched in her fist. She felt the familiar trickle of blood from her ear. She had escaped M.R. Garrick, but she had also escaped her coat, her phone, and any semblance of a home. Weeks later, Clara Thomas sat on a bench in a quiet park in Munich. She was thinner now, her clothes borrowed or stolen. She watched a mother feed ducks. She could go back to Beatrice, or to her apartment, but the threads were broken. The power wasn't a gift. It was a giant eraser, rubbing out her connections until she was nothing but a series of sudden breezes in empty rooms. She held her brass keyring, cold and useless, and realized that when you can be anywhere, you are ultimately nowhere at all.